I don't like. It's just such a tough. It's a kerfuffle. I don't even know if that's a word, but it's a kerfuffle. And well, yeah, well, that's great. I don't sound illiterate then, but. Welcome to Monkey Knife Fight Live, folks. I'm Connor Rowntree. Today we're joined by Rotowire's Nick Whalen. Nick, before we get into the weekend side of the NFL, got to touch on Thursday Night Football. What was that?
What was that, man? I was commiserating with some friends in my pick'em league, and everybody went big on Baltimore this week, obviously, as most people probably did. If you're still alive and a survivor or anything like that, this is a pretty attractive game. I honestly did not see this coming. There are definitely some upsets where, in hindsight, you're like, okay, in the back of my mind, I thought this was a possibility. Like, at no point did I consider that the Ravens would play. I don't know if it's statistically the worst offensive game of the year, but look, I've watched almost every minute of every Jaguars game this year, and they haven't played remotely as bad as this on offense. Like there are teams like the Jags and the Texans and even the Dolphins who struggle on offense week to week, but typically they can at least move the ball, and then it results in a fumble or an interception when you get down to the red zone. Like what Baltimore was unable to do for 95% of that game was astonishing. It's like they came in with a game plan. Miami seemed to counter it, and they had no secondary options. It was first down, run for gain of 0, second down, run for gain of 1, third and long, incomplete pass, punt, over and over and over. It was bizarre to watch. I mean, I also felt like not enough people were talking about the field quality. Looks terrible. Like Lamar was slipping left and right. Running backs, receivers looked like they couldn't cut. Maybe that was a factor as well, but just a really, really strange no-show by the Ravens. I would put this up there with Buffalo losing to Jacksonville as probably the most surprising result of the season.
Yeah, it was really, for me, it shocked the crap out of me. My dog, on the other hand, actually took the Dolphins to win. So something that I guess he knows that I don't know, and it's a French bulldog. So that made me feel really great about myself. But anyway, moving on, we got a weekend full of slates. Time to make up for it again. But before we jump into the weekend, just a quick NFL update. Cam Newton joining Carolina, and Odell Beckham Jr. signing with the Rams. Any thoughts on that, Nick?
Cam to Carolina is a fun story. I honestly, it didn't really cross my mind. Once Sam Darnold got hurt, I was like, well, it will be interesting to see what PJ Walker can do. Obviously had, some nice showings in the XFL, and is a kind of complete opposite of Sam Darnold in a lot of ways. And, they kind of go over his head now and grab Cam Newton. Expectations wise, like in terms of on field, I don't think we can all of a sudden expect Cam to revert to like 2015 MVP Cam just because he's back in Carolina. Obviously, he did not look like that player for most of last season in New England, but if nothing else, it's a nice distraction for a Carolina team that did they start 3-0? I think they were, they were looking, they were on track.
Their defense was just pulverizing teams.
Right. The defense looked great. Darnold looked great early on. And now I think this is just kind of turning into like, let's distract everyone from the fact that things have gone completely off the rails. But it's going to be a fun story. I mean, Cam is obviously a really fun player to watch, and it's going to be really cool. You don't get a lot of, reunions like this in the NFL. So, his first home game back is going to be insane. That's going to be really cool. On the OBJ side, I really don't like this from any perspective. As you guys know, I'm secondarily a Packers fan behind the Jags, as you can see here. It's not even that he didn't end up in Green Bay. It's that he went to a team that is operating the way that everybody wants Green Bay to operate. Everyone in Wisconsin has been begging for the Packers to basically do what the Rams are doing and go all in and try to win a Super Bowl this year. So had he ended up in KC or Baltimore or New Orleans, it would be like, okay, fair enough. Those teams maybe need him a little bit more. But for him to go to a team that really doesn't need him, I mean, they have 3 really good receivers. They just lost a receiver who wasn't getting enough touches. So, this whole thing is like, oh, I need a bigger role. I need a bigger role. Well, you're going to a team that needs you significantly less than the Browns did. It's just kind of a slap in the face, I guess, for the Packers, where it's like, you always seem to swing and miss on these situations. This seemed like a just massive opportunity to add a difference maker. And not only do you not add him to your roster, he goes to the team that's maybe your primary competition in your own conference.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be, for me, it's a 3-headed race between the pack. You got the Rams, obviously, and the Cardinals. And just the Rams getting OBJ is almost gimmicky. When you have Robert Woods, you have Higbee at tight end, you have Cooper Kupp. I mean, those aren't like OBJ is a small, fast receiver. Those guys are all small, quick guys outside of Higbee, who obviously plays tight end. If he was a big body guy like a Kelvin Johnson back in the day, well, anyone would take Kelvin Johnson, but like a receiver that can, like an AJ Green, a guy that's 6'5", that can go up and catch the football at the highest apex and bring it down, that would make sense to me. But now there's just another one of those guys that will make guys miss, like more of a yak yard kind of guy. Mm-hmm. It just seems like somebody's going to get the short end of the stick. I feel like it's going to be Robert Woods. He's on my fantasy team, and that pisses me off too. So two of us are upset about that. As for the Carolina thing, yeah, I mean, they started 3-0. They lost Christian McCaffrey, lost 3 games in a row. Cam Newton coming back, I don't think is going to do a whole lot for that season. But moving on to the Falcons and the Cowboys come Sunday, pardon me. Geez, talking about high school football before the show. Now I'm all over the place.
First ever Friday NFL game.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Has there ever been one? There's a question.
Actually, you know what? I'm sure there has at some point. I don't know when, but for some reason, at some point in the last 100 years, there has to have been a Friday game.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, Falcons versus Cowboys. The Falcons are rolling right now. I mean, this is entailing to be an exciting matchup based on where both teams are. Cowboys are coming off an embarrassing defeat at home. The Falcons, as I said, are rolling. Matty Ice looks like he's back in form from the Super Bowl days. Let's start it off with the quarterbacks. Talk a little bit about Dak Prescott, who definitely seemed like he wasn't himself last week. Do you think that injury was something to do with that, Nick, or is it time for him to get back to the way we saw before he got hurt already?
He looked horrific last week. He was one of the 5 worst quarterbacks of the week. If you watch that game, he was missing throws left and right. He was late on his decisions. And that game was essentially over midway through the second quarter. I mean, Dallas could not move the ball at all. And that really didn't change until garbage time when they made that game look a little bit more respectable. If you look at the line, the Cowboys are favored by 9 in this game. So the expectation, at least, is that they're going to bounce back. I think there's still plenty of skepticism when it comes to Atlanta, which needed, I wouldn't say a lucky play at the end, but an unexpected, 70-yarder down the sideline to Cordero Patterson when they were essentially dead to rights after blowing that game and blowing a lead to New Orleans. So, I think Atlanta certainly seems like it's ascending. Dallas felt that way a couple of weeks ago, and especially after beating Minnesota without Dak. I think everybody expected, with Dak back, they would roll over Denver. So there's now, we're casting some doubt onto a team that was pretty much unassailable through the last 6 weeks. But again, the expectation is that Dallas bounces back. I think chances are Dak looks a lot more like himself, but you have to question, is he still 100%? I mean, obviously he was injured enough to miss a game, and clearly he wasn't 100% last week. The question to me is did he potentially put enough of a strain on that calf last week that it's still an issue this week? With that said, you have to side with Dak bouncing back, right? I mean, I don't think you can really make, unless you're really concerned about the injury, it's tough to make an argument for Dak struggling again when, that's really just not who he's been for the last few years.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. It's just Dallas, they've allowed 25 plus points in 2 of their last 3 games. The Falcons have scored 25 plus points in 3 of their last 4 games. They're going to need Dak to put up some points to stay competitive. And I think he does. I think he does come back. He's always been a competitive guy. That's one of the things I love about watching Dak Prescott play. He'll rush for those yards and he'll take those hits, and he's fun to watch. And I'm hoping that he's back, and I'll take the more on him thinking that he is healthy because of what I said. Cowboys defense is in a bit of shambles right now, giving up more than 25 points, as I said, and Matt Ryan got that Falcons offense rolling. So I'm going to take the more on Dak Prescott just because I think he's going to need to spread that ball out to his playmakers on the outside. And that's where we've seen Atlanta get hurt earlier this season.
Yeah, I'm with you there. It's a high number, 295.5. But, if you look at yards per attempt, this Falcons defense looks okay. It's not a good defense. If Dak looks like himself, I think this is actually a fairly easy over. So I'll join you there.
Yeah, one stat that I noticed when I was looking at this game going in is that Dak has a 112.3 passer rating when under pressure this season. Atlanta has 21.4% QB pressure rate. The second lowest, the lowest rate in the NFL.
Yeah.
So if you give Dak his time, he's going to pick them apart. So that's a nice, I'm with you. That's a really nice more for me. And on the other side, I said it, Matt Ryan and Kyle Pitts have finally kind of gotten their groove together. It's been nice having Kyle Pitts on from a fantasy platform. And it's been nice to kind of watch the Falcons be competitive because I've always liked Matt Ryan. I've liked his competitive nature too. The tough loss in the Super Bowl to the Patriots, and then everything kind of turned down, literally down south down there in Atlanta. But I'll take more on this one because he's playing the high-flying Cowboys offense on the defense that's been exposed the last few weeks.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, Atlanta certainly looked more competent. The emergence of Jerry Rice / Randy Moss / Reggie Bush and Cordero Patterson has definitely helped. But it also feels like if Cordero Patterson is carrying your offense week to week, at some point you might be due for some regression. And obviously they're without Calvin Ridley, maybe for the rest of the season. We don't really know what's going on there. But they were able to move the ball pretty well against the Saints defense that completely shut down the Bucs the week before. So something is going right in Atlanta right now. And this Dallas defense, like they've gotten a ton of takeaways. There's a lot of individual talent, but they're prone to giving up big plays. They gave up plenty of them last week against Denver. So I think I'll go more on Matt Ryan as well. I think this probably ends up being a slightly more competitive game than it should be.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I have a funny feeling this could be a shootout down with the Cowboys. Shootout at the OK Corral Classic. But moving over to Kyle Pitts now. 5.5 receptions. That may seem like a high number, but I'm gonna have to take the more on that in the game where I see Matt Ryan throwing the ball. He had 7 targets last week, 6 targets the week before, 8 targets, 10 targets, 9 targets. He's had less than 6 targets just once this season. I think he's going to be involved in the offense. And he's got over 100 yards, over 119 yards in 2 out of his last 4 performances. So I'll take more on Kyle Pitts. I think he's going to be a big factor from the tight end, from the slot. And he also lines up on the outside too in one-on-one matchups. He is a great weapon out of Florida.
Yeah, he seems like he's in the slot or on the outside even more than he is, lined up along the offensive line in the traditional tight end spot. This one, it's kind of a 50-50 to me. Like he's had a lot of wild plays. He's had a lot of flashes where you totally see why he was drafted where he was and why he's, one of the best tight end prospects of the last 20 years. But as you alluded to, like it's kind of been feast or famine in terms of catches, in 2 of his last 3 games, he's been under this number. Obviously he's going to be a point of focus for Dallas. I think he has a couple big plays in this game. I think he maybe gets in the end zone, but for some reason, I'm thinking I'm going to go with the under here on that catches number.
Yeah, I just think because of the matchup, Nick, I have to lean towards the more. I totally respect the less, and I see the big play capability, and that really has been his go-to this season. But again, without Calvin Ridley in the lineup, you said it. Russell Gage is a smaller target, like Ridley, to get that speed. So if there's going to be deep shots to a bigger guy to go up and get it, I think it's Kyle Pitts because, as you said it, Cordell Patterson's basically their number 1 running back. Well, he is. Realistically.
Yeah. And their number 1 receiver and their number 1 kick returner. They were talking about playing him on defense this week. He might be the best. He might be the best football player in the NFL right now.
Honestly, if Matt Ryan goes down, it wouldn't surprise me if he gets a couple snaps.
Yeah, I don't see why not. Seems like a guy that would have been a quarterback in high school. I don't know if that's accurate. He just seems like it.
Now, Nick, do you have any update on the injury status of Ezekiel Elliott? I know he's supposed to play this week, but just from a performance standpoint over at Rotowire, pardon me, anything that you just want to point out before we get into his line at 69.5 yards?
Well, let me check in with Rotowire.com, the premier source for all sports news. Our last note on Ezekiel Elliott says he was a limited participant at Thursday's practice. So he was on the field, went through drills, but had his reps limited. So not the greatest sign, dealing with a little bit of a knee injury, but I would guess, like, usually in these situations, guys end up playing. The question is, do they end up limiting his workload in the game as they are at practice? Does that mean more for Tony Pollard? I don't know. I would imagine he's going to be available, but this does make me potentially lean toward the under here on that number.
Yeah, it just because of I have to take the less too because of Tony Pollard. I get that the Falcons run defense in week 10, they have the Falcons defense rush defense this season's been horrific. So if Zeke was healthy, I think that's a comfortable more, but I think he'll probably get 10 touches, 6.9 yards per carry is a little much to ask for 10 touches. So I think anywhere from 5 touches, 50 yards, 60 yards is in Zeke's wheelhouse this week. Maybe a touchdown near the goal line, but there's no point in pushing that knee in the matchup that you should be able to win with Tony Pollard. And Tony Pollard, well, he's doing a heck of a job this season. I think going into this week or going into last week, he was averaging 6 yards per carry. Like Tony Pollard's been eating defenses this season, so it's been nice to see. And then CeeDee Lamb on the outside, I have to take more. I have to take the more on that. I think he's going to be a weapon that's utilized. And then as I said earlier, I'm not sold on the Falcons pass defense. And I think this is a big day for Dak to find his favorite target in CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah. Last week was such an outlier for Dallas, where it typically the dilemma is like, I always want to go over on all those guys, but then you're like, what's the split going to be between Cooper and CD and, Zeke out of the backfield? Like last week, all those guys were terrible. I don't think you can just count on that happening again. And I think we're both expecting Dak to bounce back. So now we're back to the dilemma of if Dak plays well and he throws for 330 yards, how are those yards distributed among the receivers? I like a bounce back for CD as well. You're always going to have a fairly high line with him, 75.5, pretty high, but he's obviously proven capable of going well over that on any single week. And like you said, this is more about the Falcons pass defense. I'm thinking back to some of those games they played against like the Jets and Miami, like that pass defense looked like it was bottom 5 in the league. And even though they're coming off of a couple of nice games, I don't think, Tiger really changes its stripes there. So if we like Dak to go over, what was that number? 295.5. Yeah. Pretty good chance CD's going over this number as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty comfortable with Dak around the 300-yard mark. And just to go over CD's numbers last few weeks. So last week, he still had 9 targets, but just 2 receptions. The week before, right, 112 yards on 6 targets, 149 yards, 2 touchdowns on 9 targets the week before. And then 4 receptions, the week before that, and still produced 84 yards. So he's catching a lot of balls underneath. He's catching a lot of deep passes. He really is that guy in Dallas right now, and it's awesome to watch those Dallas Cowboys go. I think that's going to be an awesome game. I like the Moors in that one. And as I said before, I like a shootout. Now, another game that is interesting, very interesting. We're moving into the Patriots versus the Browns now. Mac and cheese, man. Looking into this matchup, there's something that I have to know. Mac Jones has Myles Garrett across from him this week. Myles Garrett has 12 sacks this season, and Isaiah Wynn, the tackle that will be lining up for Myles Garrett, has allowed 4 sacks this season. If they cannot stop Myles Garrett, they are in so much trouble. Cleveland as a team has the second most sacks in the NFL. Yeah. Like, I get that the Browns are the underdogs, but man, look at Baker's numbers without OBJ. He has looked sharp, and I think he's got a point to prove. I like the Browns as a sweet underdog pick here. I like Baker Mayfield. I know he's a little banged up, and they've been monitoring that, but I like him to go for more here. I think 225 from both these quarterbacks is attainable, and I think we're going to see a very gritty defensive matchup, but both these quarterbacks throw for right around 230, 240 yards. But I think the Browns win this game because of the Chubb factor. I think Nick Chubb comes up huge and just steamrolls and wears down this Pats defense.
This is, I think, the toughest game of the week for me. Yeah. There are a few difficult ones. And we should note, there's a pretty decent chance that Chubb might not play in this game due to being on the COVID list. That's 50-50.
Right. He was put on the COVID list on Tuesday.
Right. And, as of yesterday, they're saying there's still a chance he could play, but, obviously he hasn't practiced all week, and we're not going to know maybe until the morning of the game whether he's going to be eligible. So obviously that's something to keep an eye on with Kareem Hunt still on IR. You do have Dearness Johnson, who's looked okay. And honestly, so many teams have been able to kind of keep rolling. Like if the Titans can go and get a win against the Rams without Derrick Henry, the Browns could certainly get a win without Nick Chubb against the Patriots. But isn't it starting to feel like the Pats kind of know who they are? Early on, they were vacillating between looking like a really good team and a terrible team. And now they've just settled into like, we're okay if we're going to throw the ball 15 to 20 times a game and just, possess the ball, take 3 downs to get first downs, matriculate down the field, have these 8-minute drives. They're kind of fine with that. And I also feel like Cleveland, that's kind of been their MO for part of this season as well. And they finally started to hit some big plays last week against Cincy, but that's not really who they've been. So I think this one plays out, low scoring, both teams trying to run the ball a lot. If Nick Chubb is out, though, he is one of the few guys that really does make a difference, I think, at that position, and especially not having Kareem Hunt. To me, that would push this one in favor of New England. I like the over for Baker Mayfield's passing numbers. I think especially if they struggle to run the ball against a really good New England run defense, maybe you have to resort to the pass a little bit more. But I don't think New England wants to throw the ball all that much. Mac Jones has actually made a few pretty critical mistakes these last few weeks. I don't think he's been all that good, and they've been able to win anyway because they're moving the ball so well on the ground. So I think they're kind of happy to use him as this game manager right now. I don't know that he makes it to 225 against this defense.
See, my problem is with the game management, and you've seen it. That's been the last 2 weeks, right? Against LA, against Carolina. Well, more so against Carolina. But I don't think the Browns are going to let you game manage. I don't think it's going to be a type of game where they're going to have, where Bill Belichick is going to have that, okay, well, let's keep pounding the ball, because that front four for Cleveland will pulverize you if you get into a constant run. I think the play action pass is going to be great. Obviously, they're New England at home, but man, Mac Jones, 10 touchdown passes to 7 interceptions. Like, I think this week could be, and man, the secondary, Greedy Williams, all those guys are playing great in that Browns secondary. I just think this could be a cheeky upset for the Browns that a lot of people don't see coming. And I think Mac Jones is going to need to be throwing the ball like we saw when he threw for over 300 yards against the Jets. Well, he didn't need to throw the ball that game, but let's say the Dallas game, the Houston game, which were a little closer. Then obviously they lost in Dallas, and they lost at Houston, or they won at Houston barely. But that's what I'm saying. I think it's going to be a tighter game. That's my point. Mac Jones more.
Yeah, I mean, this game, Minnesota and the Chargers and Philly, Denver are the three that no result would surprise me. I think it's really hard to talk yourself into like a definitive argument for why any of those teams will win.
Yeah, no, I'm again, as you said, right? It's the Nick Chubb factor that really does sway who the favorite should be in that one. Now we're moving on, folks. Jason, are we moving on to the next 1 p.m. matchup, or are we going into Sunday Night Football now?
We can go into the afternoon games. There's the Packers and the Seahawks, which should be interesting. We don't have an Aaron Rodgers prop up yet because he's not been technically cleared. And so once he can be cleared as of Saturday, so I do what you will. I'd play a little guess the lines with Rodgers' number,
okay,
which is a little bit fun. But I guess you can to start you get Devontae Adams, who's not playing quarterback, but that would be interesting.
Yeah, well, I think that it all comes down to if Rodgers plays or not. We saw what Jordan Love can do last week. So, I mean, Adams might be the one guy he's been throwing the ball to, but still 84.5 yards. I guess it's Seattle's defense. Yeah, I don't think he gets 7 receptions, but 84.5 yards. I think he can do that because he's going to be the one guy. He's going to be the one guy that has fantasy value in that receiving core if Aaron Rodgers doesn't go. And if Aaron Rodgers does go, then yes, I'm taking more on Devontae Adams.
Yeah, this comes down to Rodgers. If Rodgers plays, obviously you like it a lot. If he doesn't, really tough to have any faith in Green Bay moving the ball downfield, especially against a team like Seattle that has the personnel to bring pressure on Jordan Love. And, he was panicking last week. I overall, I don't think he played as badly as a lot of the national media made it out to be. I think he was in a tough spot. I don't think this is a referendum on that draft pick or what his future is. I thought he was okay. I mean, probably give him like a C minus. It wasn't this like F minus performance that people made it out to be. But it was funny watching Devontae Adams in that game. He was visibly frustrated. There were a couple, balls going over his head, and he's just walking back to the huddle like, you got to be kidding me, man. So I think obviously he has chemistry with Aaron Rodgers that he doesn't have with Jordan Love. This is a total stay away from me until we know for sure that Rodgers plays. I guess the question is, do we see, Rodgers isn't coming off of an injury, but he's coming off of like a pseudo bye week. He hasn't been able to do anything. He's just had to sit around in Green Bay, essentially. Is there any rust? Is it kind of a Dak Prescott situation where it's like, all right, everything should be good. He's back healthy. And, you kind of see a different guy who, when you take a week off, sometimes you get out of rhythm. So this game actually, I think, is a little bit spicier than it looked. On paper, it kind of should be a fairly easy victory for Green Bay if Rodgers plays. But at the same time, Packers-Seahawks games have always been weird, no matter what the situation is. So, I wouldn't expect this to go necessarily like we would expect it to if Rodgers plays.
Yeah, we want the ball and we're going to score. Classic Matt Hasselbeck. That was awesome.
5 minutes later, Alex is in the end zone.
Could not have gone worse. And one thing about Aaron Rodgers, too, that you mentioned in the bye week, he's not really that he's not 25. He's not fighting for a spot on the team. I don't think he's in the gym this week. Hell, I watched him drinking scotch on Pat McAfee's show.
He's just been on every podcast in the country.
He's just getting hammered on podcasts, having the time of his life. But still, he does that every week anyway, and he still goes out and dices up defenses.
Will Aaron Rodgers be too drunk to play?
There it is. Will he be too much of the old sheriff? But here, his line on Monkey Knife Fight is floated right around 265.5. So if we're looking at his line going into this one, Nick, let me float that off of you. Aaron Rodgers, 265.5, more or less.
Man, that's a good line. I would say slightly more. And Rodgers hasn't had a ton of huge yardage totals, really dating back to the last couple of years. Even last season, he wins the MVP, but he's not having these like 300-400 yard games like Dak and Tom Brady. It's just been very efficient, kind of low attempts, a lot of chewing the clock. And Green Bay usually wins these games by like 7 to 10 points. They don't pile up a ton of points. I think Rodgers is fine with that. So that does give me a little bit of pause, but as long as he doesn't come in rusty, I mean, this is a Seahawks defense that certainly could be taken advantage of. And if we know Aaron Rodgers, I think he wants to make a statement, coming back into this game. Obviously this is more of a rivalry to me than Packers Vikings or Packers Bears. No offense, Connor, but like Packers Seahawks, I think being in Wisconsin, I can tell you that people view this as more of a rivalry than they do any of the NFC North teams.
Yeah, because all the NFC North teams suck.
Right. It's been so one-sided. And I mean, Minnesota, obviously.
Hey, look, I'm a Bears fan, but I'm an honest fan. I'll call it as I see it. Like, they are a bad football team through and through. And Aaron Rodgers, I got to take the more on that too. I mean, the one game where he's looked bad was the very first game of the season. 2 picks, 133 yards. I don't think we see that again, ever. Yeah. Maybe at the week 1 next year, but based on the way I saw Jordan Love play, I think Packers fans and management, you should be groveling at Aaron Rodgers' feet and to ask him to stay. Are we moving on, Jason, to the Sunday Nighter now? Gotta love this matchup. Chiefs Raiders. He said it. We're in Las Vegas. 7-7-7. Pat Mahomes has not been so lucky this year. I think he's been a little cocky, a little confident in his arm. He's used to throwing balls up, his receivers making plays, and now he's just throwing them up, and like it's not working. It just whatever he's doing, he needs to screw his head on right. Maybe stop spending so much time with his brother dancing and TikToks and get back on the field and get in the film room, because this is not the Pat Mahomes we've seen the last few years. With that said, I feel like it's going to be a high-scoring game, like an AFC West slugfest, if you will. So 285, though, he's been so bad. I got to take the more because of the lack of the rush attack, but I don't want it. Like, I'm not confident in the more, but give me the more.
I'm going to take the less here. I don't know what's going on with Mahomes. This is fairly unprecedented. The only thing that really comes to mind is like what we saw from the Packers, ironically, in like 2017 and 2018, which kind of led to the Packers drafting Jordan Love and everybody thinking Rodgers was washed up. Like, they just had those bizarre 2 seasons where the offense was terrible, all out of nowhere. They went from being like the most dangerous offense in the league to scoring like 16 points against the Jets. And that's what this reminds me of. And I think, the fact that they were able to squeak out that win over the Giants, I think they definitely lose to the Packers if Aaron Rodgers plays in that game. I mean, the door was still open for Green Bay to steal that game, despite having terrible quarterback play for most of it. The Chiefs are not fixed by any means. They have their number 2 receiver, McCole Hardman, like fun gadget player, not qualified to be a number 2 receiver in the NFL. Way too many drops, way too slight of a player, too much overlap, I think, with Tyreek Hill. They've kind of gone all in on these skinny, fast guys who are just not very good possession receivers. Travis Kelce's impact has been limited. Even Tyreek Hill's impact has been limited. I need to see it happen. At some point, there's still this feeling in the back of our minds that the Chiefs are the Chiefs. They're still that team that you don't want to play in the playoffs. And that is true. They've earned that reputation. And there's a reason they're favored in this game because, people aren't ready to jump off them completely, but they just haven't looked right. And Mahomes is missing throws. He almost never misses. And the biggest thing to me is the Raiders blitz the least amount of times of any team in the league. That's like the worst possible way you could say that. They have the lowest blitz percentage, I guess is what I meant to say, of any defense. And, they're still top 5 in the league in QB pressure. So like this team the defensive line is super underrated. Mm-hmm. The linebacking core is super underrated. They're going to put Mahomes under pressure. Part of me still thinks the Chiefs can steal a win, but I think it's going to continue to be ugly. If they're going to win games, it's going to be like they've won these last couple where you don't feel good about how it's happening. Maybe you like the end result, but I haven't seen anything to indicate that they're going to get this offense turned around.
No, I really think there's something happening with this Raiders team, and they're really coming together nicely. And the defense is a perfect example, right? You have Mason Crosby, who's now sober, Carl Naza being the first out player in the NFL. I really think that they've got this camaraderie now that with Gruden gone. Derek Carr's been playing phenomenal over this little stretch. I think they're going to be a tough team to beat when they're really playing together like this. And let me bounce some numbers off you here, Nick. Week 1, Pat Mahomes, 36 pass attempts, 337 yards. Week 2, 31 pass attempts, 343 yards. Guess how many yards he had on 35 pass attempts in Week 7?
Who was the opponent?
Tennessee.
Man, I don't know, 165.
Only 200. That's my point. From 36 pass attempts with 337 to 35 pass attempts with 206 to last week 37 pass attempts at 166.
Yeah, he was like just throwing the ball.
Like he is still throwing the ball. You can't say, he's not getting the opportunities, because I've been hearing Kansas City Chiefs fan being like, he's just not getting the same opportunities that he had. Like, what are you talking about?
No, and this is
it is poor play. And that's it. Yeah. What does it remind you of?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It reminds me of those Packers games where, I don't know if you guys were watching us closely. Obviously we get them, we get every game local here. It was just inexplicable. It was, it's like everything seemed like it was normal in terms of the play calling, in terms of the personnel, but Rodgers would drop back on a 2nd and 8 and they would just throw the ball away. Nothing there. And that's what it feels like for the Chiefs. So credit to opposing defenses. I don't know if it's, people keep talking about, the deep safeties, if they've somehow figured Mahomes out. I don't even know what that means necessarily. But they have not found a way to scheme around the way that they're being played defensively. And like I said, until we see them do it, especially against a good defense, I just have a hard time putting my faith in this offense. So again, I think the Chiefs can still find ways to win games, essentially just based on talent alone, but I don't think it's going to be pretty.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. And let's transfer over to that other offense. I kind of was pumping his tires a little bit, but let me tell you why I'm so high on Derek Carr. Since John Gruden left, 3 games, 341 yards, 323 yards, and 296 yards. Since Gruden took off, he's averaging 320 yards. Mm-hmm. KC's defense is freaking terrible in the pass game. Give me the more. Please, thank you. And I'll take a side order of fries with that.
I will go more as well. 280.5, big number for Derek Carr. But like you said, he's been easily over that the last 3 games. I mean, he did throw a game-losing, essentially, pick 6 last week. And that can't be overstated. He still is Derek Carr at the end of the day. We have to keep that in mind. But yeah, I mean, based on the matchup, this is one of those lines where you'd have a pretty tough time convincing me that the under is the right way to go.
Yeah, no, but either way, he's been at least throwing the ball very efficiently this season. Multiple 300-yard games, multiple 380-yard games, and the one 400-yard game to start the season. Josh Jacobs now 60 yards, 60.5 yards. I like the more on that just because I don't trust Kansas City's defense right now. I see it being more of a pass script. So I think anywhere 50 to 60-yard range. But I just think he's going to break a big run, get 20, 25 yards on one of those chunk plays, and then just a bunch of 5-yard carries, 4 or 5, probably only 10 to 11 touches, somewhere in there. But I think that's all he's going to need against like a house of card. That's the Kansas City defense, rush defense.
I'm going to go under on this one. I mean, I know we went over this against the Giants last week, but I actually thought KC played Green Bay fairly well in the run. They don't necessarily have the personnel to match up with AJ Dillon, who played really well, but I thought they did a pretty good job of containing Aaron Jones. And of course they knew Green Bay was going to be pounding the ball. So that helps when you don't have a quarterback you can trust. But I think Kansas City secondary is the real problem here. And, the rush defense isn't great, but I think Oakland, every single week I do this, Oakland, I think Las Vegas is going to be able to take advantage of this defense through the air. I think they can get some splashy run plays every now and then, but I think this is one where they take advantage of the secondary and they don't necessarily need Josh Jacobs to tote the ball 15 times for 75 yards. I like the under here.
Yeah, I understand why. Travis Kelce. Now, this is the interesting one because you think that if I'm Pat Mahomes, I'm going through something, or I don't want to admit I'm going through something, whatever. Then either way, if I was going through something and I know that, I'd go to my safety net who has the sure hands, which is Travis Kelce, the big target. If not, I'm going to Travis Kelce anyway because that's what I used to do. I don't like. It's just such a tough. It's a kerfuffle. I don't even know if that's a word, but it's a kerfuffle. And well, yeah, well, that's great. I don't sound illiterate then, but I mean, I'm gonna take the more just because it's Travis Kelce. That's really the only reason. He's gone less than back-to-back weeks on this number. His target share after 3 consecutive weeks with double-digit receptions. Last 2 weeks, he's gone 6 and 8 targets. It's gonna be tough, but I'm gonna have to take the more.
Yeah, this one's a little tough. The numbers, I think, a little bit higher than I would like. It's if it was 6.5, maybe I'd feel better. I think I'm going to go under. I think teams have really done a good job of containing Travis Kelce. I mean, it's been 6 weeks now since he's had a 100-yard game, which is fairly unheard of. I do. He's still capable of those big plays. You think of some of the plays that he had early in the season. I don't remember if it was like the Ravens or the Chargers game where he's, catching balls over the middle and just like shoving defenders off on his way to the end zone. Like that's still in there somewhere. I think I would rather take the more on his yardage in hopes of him breaking one of those plays. But I don't know if he gets to that catch total. I mean, just 9 total catches, 14 targets over the last 2 weeks. I don't think teams have necessarily figured out Travis Kelce, but I think they figured out this Chiefs offense to the point where, there's some secret now to limiting a guy who seemed like he was unlimitable. Now, I don't think that's a word over these last couple of years.
Don't worry. We have our own MKF dictionary on this show. It's all good. We make it up as we go. Well, Tyreek Hill. Let's talk about him because there's a guy that's just, he didn't seem like himself. And then 2 weeks ago, 18 targets, 12 receptions, 94 yards, a touchdown. Okay, he's back. Last week, 4 receptions for 37 yards. Like, still had 11 targets though. I got to take the more on the yards for Tyreek Hill. I know he's gone less than that in 3 out of his last 4 games. I think actually 4 out of his last 5. Yeah, 4 out of his last 5 games. He's gone less than 81 receiving yards. But it's that same argument, right? I still think the Kansas City Chiefs have the talent. I'm not exactly sold on the pass defense of the Raiders. I like their pass rush. I think Mahomes is going to be under pressure. But if he can get the ball out to Tyreek Hill quick, he can make some guys miss. It's just realistically catch the ball, secure the catch, then make the play.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Tyreek Hill is he's one of like 3 guys in the league who could go over this number on 1 catch. So you always do worry about that. But the Raiders are top 5 in the league in passing yards allowed, top 5 in the league in yards per attempt. And that's the good top 5 in the league. Their defense has played well against the pass. So, personnel wise, it should be a decent matchup for the Raiders. But I mean, Tyreek Hill is still Tyreek Hill. And, I thought the Packers did a pretty good job, all things considered, of limiting him. But it was also Tyreek Hill who had the game sealing catch, in the fourth quarter when they needed him most. So I don't know. I think I have to go under on this though. Like I still envision the Chiefs offense struggling in this game. If I'm going under on Mahomes, if I think it's going to be kind of an ugly game like these last few have been, it's hard for me to justify going over on Tyreek Hill. So I think it's another kind of struggle fest for this Chiefs offense.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be a rivalry football game. I mean, Kansas City really needs to show if they want to be the big dog in the AFC West, they got to start beating teams in the AFC West. It's that simple. It's going to be a tough matchup. Nick, what's your final projection for that Sunday nighter?
I mean, well, are you talking Chiefs Raiders?
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't know if that was for sure the Sunday game.
Yeah, that is the Sunday night prime time, baby, in Las Vegas.
I
want to go.
Do I want to go, man? Dude, tickets are probably going to be like $450. So yeah, I mean, if we could take
Jason. Yeah,
if we could take the MKF jet out there, that'd be ideal.
Let me fuel it up.
Yeah, just stop over at the Sicko station.
You gotta make sure you pick me up first because I'm like way up north, and then I'll come down.
Bob Kraft could lend me his out of a TF Green Airport in Rhode Island.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll start out east, get some momentum, swing through Wisconsin. I I still think the Chiefs find a way to win this game. I really can't justify why. I just think they will. I think it's going to be ugly though. I think it's something like Chiefs, 23, Raiders 17, something like that. Maybe even lower scoring. I have very little reason to trust this Chiefs defense, but you also look back and it's like, I really want to take the Raiders here. The Raiders just lost to the Giants, and I don't think the Giants are very good at all. So both of these teams are really hard to trust right now.
Yeah. I mean, can I just say though, the Chiefs only beat the Giants 20-17.
They did. But they at least beat the Giants.
They did beat them. I think the game's at home. I think the Raiders know they let one get away last week. I think Derek Carr knows he let one get away. And as you said, it was such a typical Derek Carr play. I think he knows he needs to be better. And I think Vegas just comes out and executes. I think that Andy Reid phase in KC kind of losing the reins like he did in Philadelphia when everything started going off the rails. I think it was you that noted that, right? When it was everything started going wrong, he leaned on his quarterback, Michael Vick, go make a play. Seems like Patrick Mahomes is just going out there to make a play. I do not trust Kansas City right now. I don't really like Vegas after last week, but give me the Raiders at home. Give me the Raiders. Yeah, they're at home in Vegas. Let's roll the dice. Let's have some fun.
All right, I like it. Well, we'll see how it turns out, and we'll revisit this next week.
Love it. Guys, thank you so much for today and for tuning in. That's Nick Whalen from Rotowire. I'm Connor Rowntree, folks. Monkey Knife Fight's very own. And remember to hit it hard.